So, I'm the kind of person to just grind through games no matter how hard I try to commit myself to the extra content or the secret ending. After I finish a game, I generally never play it again. That's even if I get to the end of the game, as of on my other channel, before it fell off, I spent 95% of the revenue from that on GTA 5 shark cards, and then I realised I've just wasted all my money, and then it was too late. So now I'm extremely cautious with my money, so if a game doesn't choke my attention span, that's a refund from me. However, every so often there's a game that, despite being incredibly slow and taking its time, just hits different. These games aren't the best games, but the concept behind them is so interesting, I can't help but leave myself thinking about what these games really meant well after I finished them. So, what are these games? Well, first of all, there's 3 of them, and strangely enough, they're all murder mystery games. The Yakuza series is my favourite franchise of all time, and I spent almost a year getting through the series, so naturally in the middle of the 5th entry I had a burnout because of how boring this part of the game was, so I searched for another game to play, and there was one game laying in the back of my mind called Return of the Obra Dinn. I remember watching a video essay about the game. I thought it was cool, so I just watched the playthrough so I can consume all the information on the game, so if any of my friends talked about it, I could act like I played it. However, watching a let's play to figure out the information and lore on the game just doesn't work because of how the game is structured. Let me explain. In the game, you are a detective on a pirate ship, with everyone on the pirate ship has been long dead, and by examining their corpses you can go back in time to a freeze frame of when they died with a bit of audio and dialogue, and your goal is to fill in this book and match each crew member to a name and a method of death. So technically you can only play the game truly once, as if you know all the crew members and how they died. On a second playthrough you can just fill out the book straight away. When I eventually got round to playing the game for myself during the Yakuza burnout, this seemed impossible. I was finding the corpses alright, but how the hell was I supposed to identify them? I figured out a few obvious ones, like the people who are obviously the captain or obviously the butchers, but the rest, I was clueless, so I almost quit. But as I went back to slogging through Yakuza 5, I had a bunch of questions in my mind. What were those sea monster things? What was in the locked room? What happened in the time gap where nobody seemed to have died? So I decided to go back into the game, and that's when I started noticing some things. And when I say I started noticing some things, I just started beating the game. There wasn't really any logic behind it, my brain just clicked into it, and I just started connecting the dots. This guy probably killed that guy because they were here and there at those positions, and the game just forced me to learn the game, and it just gave me a massive sense of accomplishment and immersion that I would never got from watching that simple let's play. So, why does this game hit different? Well, throughout the game there's just this scary vibe. Whether it's the art style or the fact that you're dealing with some pretty brutal deaths here, the game kind of feels like a horror game in a way. There was this one moment where I saw people falling off a boat. In the previous scene you saw these people getting on the boat, and I presumed that they were alive and they escaped, but suddenly seeing in the distance that they died, that horror vibe just suddenly hit me. I'll discuss this more as we go through the other games, but just keep it in mind. Paradise Killer, as you can tell from the subtitle, is a gay-ass anime murder mystery game, and is quite possibly the complete opposite from Return of the Obra Dinn. I found the game from a 25 indie game recommendations video, and it was the only game that actually stood out to me in the video. Now, the reason why I played the game is simply because of the vaporwave aesthetic. I just wondered how a murder mystery would go down in this giant open world. How would they handle it if the environment is so big? The game starts how you'd expect. You go around finding clues, interrogating interesting people, but something felt off. Usually I'd take an unintended route to a location, like instead of going up a ladder that I'm supposed to get to this skeleton guy, I instead went all the way around the mountains and in the process found a house of someone who went missing, and around the back, down the cliff, there was their corpse. This in turn unlocked a whole new mystery to solve, a brand new culprit that I'd have to find, and all I could think was how many other secrets on the island are like this, and how was the game going to end. This game was very non-linear with all the clues scattered around the place and very easily missable, and I was just thinking, how am I supposed to find all these clues if they're that missable? Like this murder, this whole other murder is just in a really accidental and hard to find location. So it brings me back to the other point, how's this game supposed to end if it's in such a non-linear way? Now I pondered all these different questions during the space of time in which I was trekking across the world from one place to another, and whilst yes there was a fast travel system, it cost currency which there was a limited amount of. These treks from one place to another, as I'm sure most of you know, are called liminal spaces, and the more I ran around these liminal spaces, the more immersed and familiar I became with the world, making the discovery of all these secret areas more impactful and better. I'm going to take a detour for a second to talk about another game, which once again is the complete opposite of this one, Postal 2. Postal 2 is what your grandparents think GTA is, racism, pissing on people, lots of gore, but overall Postal 2 is just a comedy game. The same cannot be said for Postal 1, the game before it, which is pretty much a horror game, and Postal 2's world, despite being an average size, feels massive as there aren't any way to traverse other than just slowly walking across the world, just like Paradise Killer. The game also has those liminal spaces from one place from another, and unlike Paradise Killer, which has its upbeat soundtrack, Postal 2 has a I bring up Postal 2's horror and compare it to Paradise Killer to cement that Paradise Killer has a little bit of horror in it too. Like I said about Obra Dinn, these games have a horror undertone, so these are about murders, murder mysteries, so of course there's going to be some underlying tension in the world. The game's ending answered all my questions, as you can simply choose a character to be executed for each crime. There are no right or wrong answers, just push a button and they're dead. Not too much of an ending, as the game was all about the journey, and the reason why the big relevant plot stuff was placed in areas so missable is because it didn't matter. If you found them or not, it just led to this. The game cannot truly be solved, but of course the community has put together that this motherfucker is the most likely person to have done the murder, was of course just in some random bunker on the map, which I didn't even find, which exaggerates my point. And so after that sudden ending, all I could think about after I finished the game for the next few days is, what the fuck did I just play?
Go fuck your mom!
Disco Elysium is a murder mystery top-down game with a lot of reading, so it might as well be a visual novel, with the main gimmick of the game being that you have all these different brain abilities that you can level up, and the more you level up one ability, the more it will change your let's play. Scale into strength and you'll be able to beat up your enemies, scale into morale and it will prevent you from getting sad, scale into hand coordination and you can shoot people. And watching different let's plays and how they have very different playthroughs is pretty neat, and how everyone has just unique playthroughs just adds to the immersion. Now if you've watched my other videos, you'll know that pretty much every video I talk about a game, I somehow link it back to immersion and immersive gameplay, and yeah, this is no different. Next on the checklist we have the liminal spaces, and you got it. Being in third person allows you to see the hand-drawn area a whole lot better, and considering you'll be wandering around looking for clues for the case, the art is really nice to look at. Next, the progression and ending of the game, and just like Paradise Killer, most of the game is optional, but unlike Paradise Killer, where you can just skip to the end immediately if you know what you're doing, with Disco Elysium, you have to do some of the side content in order to level your stats up so you can actually do the main story, which is hidden among the side quests, so you don't know what's optional and what isn't, just like real life, so immersion. And yeah, I think I've made my point on why all these games seem to hit different and how they're connected. Go play them. Bye bye.